Welcome back, everybody, to the Lindsey Elmore Show. We're talking a lot about peptides these days because lots of people are also talking about peptides. And so I wanted to give you an overview of what it is that has been buzzing in the gyms and wellness clinics and what everybody in Hollywood is talking about. They're being marketed as a big thing in muscle growth, fat loss, anti-aging, recovery. They've even come out that they may help with orgasms and sexual desire. And there's one that has even earned the nickname the Wolverine shot because it can make you look like the Wolverine is what people say. So it sounds amazing, but everything in biohacking, there's more to talk about. So let's talk first about what people are injecting. Some of the most popular peptides include BPC 157, which people say can help accelerate healing. This is kind of the OG of the peptide world. And then one of the newer ones is CJC 1295. So, if you want to make lists of numbers and letters, you can look up all these peptides. So this one is also known as tesamorelin. So some of the peptides are also kind of like drug-ish. It's a gray area. Some peptides are truly like drugs that are FDA approved. Some are kind of in the gray area because they've got to be compounded. And then some are just kind of, the Wild West out there. So this CJC 1295 is thought to accelerate growth hormones and blends everything it promises everything under the sun. So telling people, it can help with fat burning, help with better recovery after workouts. And it sounds like a dream for athletes or anyone chasing longevity. And that's no wonder why it's become so trendy. I mean, these peptides are everywhere these days. And when you think about cutting edge health fads, you think about LA and Manhattan and all these places and celebrities all over the United States are talking about the peptides and how they're using them. But the truth of the matter is the science is kind of limited. Yeah, there are some studies, but there's not a lot to really tell us that, yes, this is doing this. And we certainly don't have randomized controlled trials like people really want. So we do have tesamorelin that is FDA approved for specific conditions, but they're super limited, like HIV-related lipodystrophy. So that's not a condition that a lot of people are going to have or going to have problems with. So, it's got really narrow medical uses, but everybody talks about how great and wonderful it is. And so we certainly, like I said, don't have large clinical studies for healthy people who just want to feel better, younger, and recover faster. We have studies for people who have HIV-related lipodystrophy. And so the people that are using these peptides are not necessarily the people that the peptides have been studied in. And that is the risk of using new drugs or new compounded medications. A lot of these peptides are sold for research only, but because they're sold on Amazon, people just go and buy them. And so we don't have enough regulation. We don't know if they're pure. We don't know if they're guaranteed to be safe. And when you buy peptides, you really don't know what's in the vial, right? You don't know because if you're not buying it from a drug manufacturer or a really good compounding pharmacy, you don't know what you're getting. Also, dosing is like the Wild West. It's like a gambling project. You don't know how to dose these, and people often overshoot, chasing faster results, but then they get higher risk for side effects. And so let's talk about the basics. Peptides are not magic. They can't undo poor nutrition, lack of sleep, or chronic stress. They're best thought of tools that might enhance recovery and performance, but only when layered on a solid lifestyle foundation. So there's a ton of hype, and the biggest selling point is precision. Unlike many drugs or supplements that really have this wide net, they do a lot of things and have a lot of effects and side effects. Peptides can be like laser pointers to where they want to go. So they can get really narrow into getting into things like tendon healing. Whereas a medication that is good for muscles and tendons is going to be good for all of your muscles and tendons, not just, this one thing that you're going after. They're also used for fat metabolism and hormone signaling in very specific ways. And that's super exciting, but precision without any proof of what you're precisely targeting leads us into really murky waters. And so a lot of docs are saying, like, you've got to use caution because everybody is so excited about peptide therapy and they're considering it, but they're not necessarily being wise or smart about it. So if you're going to use it, work with somebody who knows what they're doing, who's been a practitioner that's actually studied and used peptides. Your sourcing is going to be really, really important. We could do an entire episode just on the sourcing of peptides. And remember that the most powerful health levers that you have are not peptides. They're the things that you already know that you should be doing that you may or may not be doing. So if you're not having proper sleep and good nutrition and good movement and working on your emotional well-being, the peptides aren't going to work. They're never going to work. So peptides probably are the future of medications, medicine. Are they? I don't know. Or maybe they're just a wellness trend. They're probably a little bit of both. I think we'll probably find out in the next few years kind of which peptides really work and which ones are just fads and just really didn't hold up. Which brings up another problem is that we don't have enough clinical research. So we have the potential, but the evidence is still catching up. And so people are so excited. They're using the peptides as fast as possible, but they're not necessarily getting the evidence that they need to be sure that it is safe and effective before use. So that's it for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in to the Lindsey Elmore Show. We're going to be talking more about the controversial peptides on the market, including one that may cause you to have a greater sexual desire, more intimacy, and better orgasms. So stay curious, stay cautious, and always be well, my friends. Thank you for listening to the Lindsey Elmore Show.